Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Vajajanaranjana Yashoda Nandana Vajajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yodanandana Vrajajanarandana Yashodanandana Vrajajanarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivajacharya Sutta His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivajacharya Sutta Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Anta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Mathura Dham Ki Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jagannathpuri Dham Ki Ganga Maya Ki Yamuni Maya Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to the Sum of the Buddhas. Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada. All glories to Shri Guru and Guranga. Hare Krishna, Devi Buddhis. Thank you for coming this morning, joining us. And thank you for allowing me to come and practice giving Srimad Bhagavatam class. I hope that you all pay attention so that if there's any corrections, you can give them at the end of this class. Okay. So we'll start with a reading from Srila Prabhupada Kathamrita. Just finding. Is the bookmark accurate? No. So we just heard a letter that was written on November 13th. And it says, Abe wrote to his servant Gauranga, mentioning some of his difficulties in Lucknow and asking him to come there and help. In this letter, Abe spoke bitterly of his wife Radharani and children. And I'll just read this letter again to refresh. Gauranga Prabhu, please accept my obeisances. I received your letter dated 7th. Due to lack of time, I could not reply in time. I stay here alone with some servants. If I leave now, then I have to close everything down. Due to my leaving once and closing the business, I have lost about 10,000 rupees, and the goodwill has also been affected, and my enemies have increased. That is why I am fighting, practically staking my whole life. I am staying here all alone in the middle of so many difficulties, not for nothing. That's why I am writing to you repeatedly to come here. As soon as you receive this letter, show it to Dubra. Take at least 10 rupees from him and come here. When you come here, I will make arrangements to send money to your home. What's the point in holding you back with an excuse that there is no servant or maidservant? I tried to serve them enough by keeping servants, maidservants, and cooks. But up until today, they have not become attached to devotional service. So I am no more interested about those affairs. When you come here, then I will go to Calcutta. If I see that they are interested about devotional service, then only will I maintain my establishment there. Otherwise, I will not maintain them anymore. Bring a quilt for me. Here is Abe. The two interests, family and preaching, were conflicting. Radharani had never shown any interest in Back to Godhead. She seemed to work against his enthusiasm for both publishing and for earning. The business was called Abhay Charande and Sons, and yet the sons were disinclined to help. When he had called for a servant to join him in Lucknow, the family had objected, saying they needed Gauranga more there. What was the use? The family was interested neither in backing him in his business, nor in taking up the life of devotional service. And since his business was practically an outcome of family life, he resented that he had to give so much of his energy. It was the old economic law by Marshall that he had learned in college. Without family affection, a man's economic impetus is weakened. Of course, there could be a compatible balance between family service and devotional service. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had described two simultaneous obligations, bodily and spiritual. Social status, mental development, cleanliness, nourishment, and the struggle for existence were all bodily obligations. The activities of devotional service to Krishna were spiritual. And the two should parallel one another. In Bhaktivinoda Thakur's life, his family was a source of spiritual encouragement, and he used his social position to advance his preaching. But Abbe's experience had been different. The two paths seemed to be at war, each threatening each other's existence. He felt himself operating somewhat like the materialist he had criticized in his writings, absorbed in the struggle for existence with insufficient time for self-realization. Although his family made more and more demands on him, he was feeling less inclined to work for them and more inclined to preach Krishna consciousness. It was a predicament. He could only push on diligently, support his family, expand his business, and hope for a great success so that he could revive his publishing. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, chapter 20, text 26. There's bookmark. Okay. Yasha Shivam Shushrava Arya Sangame Yadrichaya Chopashrino Tite Sakrit Katam Gunakyo Viramed Pashum Shiryat Pravave Guna Sangrahechaya Yasha Shivam Shushrava Arya Sangame Yadrichaya Chopashrino Tite Sakrit Katam Gunagno Viramed Pashum Shriya Pravale Guna Sangrahechaya Yasha Shivam Shushrava Arya Sangame Yadrichaya Chupashrino Tite Sakrit Katam Gunagno Viramed Pashum Shiryat Pravale Guna Sangrahechaya. Prabhuji's. Yasha Shivam Shushrava Arya Sangame Yadachaya Chushujano Vihasakrit Yasha Shivam Shushrava Arya Sangame Yadachaya Chushujano Vihasakrit Shivam Shushava Arya Sangame Yadachaya Choshava Questions? Shashivam Shushava Arya Sangame Yadachaya Choshava Katam Gunagno Virameda Vishu Shila Prabhade Gunasamgati Chaya Yasha Glorification Shivam all auspicious Shushrava O highly glorified Lord Arya Sangame in the association of advanced devotees Ayadrichaya somehow or other Cha also Upashinoti hears Te your Sakrit even once Katam how Gunagya one who appreciates good qualities Virame can cease Vina unless Pashum an animal Shri the goddess of fortune Yat which Pravave accepted Guna your qualities Sangraha to receive Ichaya with a desire. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki. My dear highly glorified Lord, if one in the association of pure devotees hears even once the glories of your activities, he does not, unless he is nothing but an animal, give up the association of devotees. For no intelligent person would be so careless as to leave their association. The perfection of chanting and hearing about your glories was accepted even by the desire to hear your unlimited activities and transcendental glories. Report. The association of devotees, Arya Sangama, is the most important factor in this world. The word Arya refers to those who are advancing spiritually. In the history of the human race, the Aryan family is considered to be the most elevated community in the world because it adopts the Vedic civilization. The Aryan family is distributed all over the world and is known as Indo-Aryan. In prehistoric days, all the members of the Aryan family followed the Vedic principles, and therefore they became spiritually advanced. The kings, known as Rajarishis, were so perfectly educated as kshatriyas, or protectors of the citizens, and so greatly advanced in spiritual life, that there was not a bit of trouble for the citizens. The glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be very much appreciated by the Aryan family. Although there is no bar for others, the members of the Aryan family very quickly catch the essence of spiritual life. How is it that we are finding it very easy to spread Krishna consciousness among Europeans and Americans? History reports that Americans and Europeans proved their capability when they were anxious to spread colonization, but at the present time being contaminated by the advancement of material science. Their sons and grandsons are turning into reprobates. This is due to their having lost their original spiritual culture, which is Vedic civilization. Presently, these descendants of the Aryan family are taking this Krishna consciousness movement very seriously. Others who are associating with them and hearing and chanting of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra from the lips of pure devotees are also becoming captivated by the transcendental vibration. Transcendental vibrations are very much effective when chanted among Aryans, but even though one does not belong to the Aryan family, he will become a Vaishnava simply by hearing the mantra because the vibration has great influence over everyone. Maharaj Prithu points out that even the goddess of fortune, who is the constant companion of Lord Narayana, specifically wanted to hear about the Lord's glories. And for the association of the gopis who are pure devotees, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, underwent severe austerities. The impersonalist may ask why one should bother chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra continually for so many years instead of stopping and trying for Kaivalya, liberation, or merging into the existence of the Lord. In answer, Maharaj Prithu maintains that the attraction of this chanting is so great that one cannot give up the process unless he is an animal. This is the case even if one comes in contact with this transcendental vibration by chance. Prithu Maharaj is very emphatic in this connection. Only an animal can give up the practice of chanting Hare Krishna. Those who are not animals, but actually intelligent, advanced, human, civilized men cannot give up this practice of continually chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare. Shri Prabhupada ki. Om Angyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, in this section of the Srimad Bhagavatam that we've been reading, Maharaj Prithu was performing 100 horse sacrifices, and he was able to execute 99 of those sacrifices, but was interrupted by Indra out of envy, and Lord Brahma had appeared on the scene and mitigated the drama and suggested that Maharaj Prithu be satisfied with his execution of 99 sacrifices instead of 100 because he's a pure devotee and these sacrifices are, not the highest way of serving the Lord anyway, and that his behavior as a devotee is more pleasing to the Lord when he's forgiving to Indra. So King Prithu took that advice and forgave Indra. And in this part, chapter 20, entitled Lord Vishnu's Appearance in the Sacrificial Arena, we understand that Lord Vishnu appeared because he was so pleased with King Prithu for taking the advice of Lord Brahma. So when Lord Vishnu appeared, he highlighted the following points, which are qualities that are apparent in an advanced soul and behavior which pleases him. So I went through this chapter 20 and sort of put a little list of points that Lord Vishnu spoke upon. There was a little living entity inside the scarf. And does anyone want to show something? Okay. So the first quality and behavior that pleased the Lord in this circumstance was Maharaj Prithu's forgiveness. The second was his intelligence. which was defined in the verses by his determination in helping others, because he was conducting the fire sacrifices, or sorry, the horse sacrifices for the benefit of his citizens. So he was engaged in that activity as a welfare activity, which is amazing, because when we think of intelligence in modern times, we often think about our IQ or our education, but Lord Vishnu qualifies intelligence. The highest intelligence is defined by persons who act for the benefit of others. It's pretty amazing. And then the next, number 3, was distinction between the body and the soul, which is a part of intelligence. Being able to not only theoretically understand that you're not the body, but acting on that platform. Following the instructions of the acharyas, being self-controlled, engaged in devotional service, because being engaged in devotional service helps one to transcend the modes of material nature. Being satisfied within, maintaining equal vision and being equipoised in all circumstances. Being peaceful and connected to Krishna in friendship and affection. So these were the things that were the qualities and behaviors that attracted Lord Vishnu to the service of Maharaj Prithu, and impelled him to want to appear at that place and glorify his devotee. So we can see the first thing on this list, which is also mentioned in the Shastras as a quality of a Brahmana or an advanced devotee, is forgiveness. So under the circumstances, I'm sure maybe many of us can relate with trying to do a service for Krishna, and it may be impeded in some way. And so that can make us feel quite frustrated. And because we're trying to serve Krishna in those circumstances, there might be some pride in the heart, thinking, oh, I'm just trying to do this for Krishna, and no one should really get in my way, and no one should impede that process. And in a sense, no one really can. But what's interesting is that above the service, that the mentality that the devotee is keeping while doing the service is more pleasing to Krishna than the service itself. So when in this circumstance, Maharaj Prithu, he's performing these amazing sacrifices. But when Lord Vishnu appears, he says that one who does not possess elevated qualities and behavior cannot possibly achieve my favor simply by performance of sacrifices, severe austerities, mystic yoga. So again, I guess just to bring it to back down to earth where we are, because we're not really performing horse sacrifices these days, but in whatever service that we're doing, whatever sacrifices that we're making while we're performing those services, whatever austerity we might be, small austerity we might be undergoing, that's actually not what pleases Krishna the most. What's pleasing Krishna is these qualities and elevated behaviors. is not awakened. We're not experiencing his presence. So when the pure devotee is speaking, glorifying the Lord, because the potency of their devotion is so powerful, it actually awakens the consciousness in the heart of a living being and awakens them to their original relationship with the Lord, because it allows them to perceive the Lord's presence. And when the living entity is perceiving the Lord's presence, automatically there's a remembrance of how of the spiritual emotions relating to the Lord. And then those spiritual emotions help us to understand how we relate in what kind of relationship we're attracted to Krishna. And then so we come to today's verse, which is being spoken by Maharaj Prithu. And I'll just read you the verse before as well, just the translation. So he says, "My dear Lord, I therefore do not wish to have the benediction of merging into your existence, a benediction in which there is no existence of the nectarian beverage of your lotus feet. I want the benediction of at least 1,000,000 ears, for thus I may be able to hear about the glories of your lotus feet from the mouths of your pure devotees. My dear Lord, you are glorified by the selected verses uttered by great personalities. Such glorification of your lotus feet is just like saffron particles. When the transcendental vibration from the mouths of great devotees carries the aroma of the saffron dust of your lotus feet, the forgetful living entity gradually remembers his eternal relationship with you. Devotees thus gradually come to the right conclusion about the value of life. My dear Lord, I therefore do not need any other benediction but the opportunity to hear from the mouth of your pure devotee." And then today's verse, "My dear highly glorified Lord, if one in the association of pure devotees hears even once the glories of your activities, he does not, unless he is nothing but an animal, give up the association of devotees, for no intelligent person would be so careless as to leave their association. The perfection of chanting and hearing about your glories was accepted even by the goddess of fortune, who desired to hear of your unlimited activities and transcendental glories." So for one who's experienced this merciful exchange of being able to hear from a pure devotee, and technically we all are because we get to read Srila Prabhupada's books, and then gaining direct access to the Lord's lotus feet, remembering their dormant love, this is the means and the ends of the goal of life. It's the process for approaching the Lord and awakening our dormant love. And at the same time, it's what the most advanced devotees do, such as the goddess of fortune, or even more celebrated devotees, such as the residents of Vrindavan. But if one gets such an opportunity, but then gives up the association of devotees who are hearing and chanting about the Lord, and they give up this opportunity to advance, they're nothing but an animal. Because the pleasure derived from this experience of hearing the Lord's glories is so great that even Lakshmi Devi, who's the Lord's eternal consort, she aspired to elevate herself even further spiritually simply by hearing the Lord's glories. So the process of hearing is so powerful that even the most advanced devotees in existence, they utilize this process for their own advancement. So we can learn so much just by that one example. And also, so for us, like an ordinary person who has such an opportunity, if we give up this process, which is able to derive so much pleasure, it's it's just so unintelligent that the Shastras are practically condemn it and condemn us as animals. And so I've thought about what is animal consciousness, and animal consciousness in the Shastra is comprised of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And so these four activities we share with animal life, but the only difference between a human being and an animal is spiritual life. And so when human beings cease to engage in self-realization and utilize this human form of life properly, then we're not actually considered human beings any longer. And we're considered to be what Srila Prabhupada explains in the Shastra, which is Dvipada Pashu. Dvi means two, Pada means legged, and Pashu is animal. So we degrade ourselves by not taking up the opportunity of self-realization in this human form of life to the condition of animal life, or we become two-legged animals. And Srila Prabhupada explains in the Shastra that the name, or sorry, that a human being who is interested only in Parvati Marga, which is composed of basically, yeah, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, he goes further into explaining that in human life it is exemplified by basically just being engaged in activities of sense gratification, sex, meat eating, intoxication, gambling. This is the path of material gratification. And Prithu Maharaj in this verse is agreeing with that Vedic conclusion. And he takes it to almost one step further because in the Shastras, when we reach the Prabhupada's purports about two-legged animals and the context in which this term is being used, it's condemning in a general way human life that's not led by spiritual values. But it's amazing because King Prithu, he specifies specifically that, or specifies that the condition of somebody who is walking this path of Pavriti Marg is that they have no interest in hearing. So that's the specific thing that they're lacking, this desire to hear about the Lord, to understand Him, to understand their relationship with Him. And when we say Ato Brahma Jignasa, so it's now is a time to inquire because you have this human form of life. That desire to inquire, that interest in hearing about the Lord, hearing about self-realization is not it hasn't awoken. And so that lack of interest in hearing, Prithu Maharaj, he condemns a human, or I guess an animal in a human body, and calls such a person unintelligent. Yeah, it's quite sad condition. And in a sense, this is the condition, at least for myself personally, that I was in before hearing about the Lord and hearing Srimad Bhagavad Gita and being connected with the Krishna consciousness movement, because other systems of spiritual life had failed in delivering comprehensive spiritual knowledge that was not hypocritical or contrary. And so it didn't satisfy the heart nor change the heart. And so luckily, we've all been blessed by being able to reach the Prabhupada's books so that we're not living in this condemned way. We're living according to, or at least we're trying to live according to Vedic conclusions. And Srila Prabhupada, he explains that in and of itself, even though we might not be fully transcendental, is different. And the difference is because we're trying, whereas somebody who has no interest and has no taste for hearing about the Lord, they're condemned. But for somebody who actually has an interest and is trying, even if they have perhaps habits or mentalities or needs to, that we require further purification, that because we're on the path of Nivriti Marga, which he defines as the path of purification and tapasya or austerity. So because we're on this path of being purified, we have hope. We're not condemned. He says, but when you voluntarily give up all these nonsense habits, that is called Nivriti Marga and tapasya, the path of purification, austerity. We've got three paths kind of in front of us. We have Pavariti Marg, the path of trying to fulfill material desires and acting contrary to Vedic conclusions without any restriction. And then we have Nivriti Marga, which is the path of purification, tapasya, austerity. And then we're striving towards this path of Bhakti Marg or Bhakti Yoga. So to advance to the stage of Bhakti Marga or devotional service, we need to undergo some purification. I can only speak for myself, but we definitely need to go through purification, because if it's not that you can jump from Pavariti Marg just right to Bhakti Marg without undergoing any purification. It's actually kind of ludicrous in a sense, because it'd be like taking a dog, walking them through the temple door, and then just acting like, yeah, so they're good to go. Now they can go into the deity room and start trusting Krishna. So I'll speak for myself. So because I've lived a life where I was not acting according to Vedic principles, so there has to be a transition period where I'm purifying myself to undergo, some austerity and restriction, and then hoping to elevate myself so that I can come to the platform of devotional service, so that I can actually be qualified to serve Radha and Krishna, serve Srila Prabhupada. So to advance to the stage of Bhakti Marg or devotional service, we need to undergo purification. Otherwise, we run the risk of hearing from pure devotees, hearing from Srila Prabhupada, even maybe reading Bhagavad Gita, but not allowing the seed of bhakti to be sown in the heart. So the process of hearing and chanting regularly, that sadhana bhakti, it nourishes that seed that's being planted whenever we hear about Krishna, talk about Krishna, hear his names, chant his glories. And the association of devotees is like sunlight to that seed. And so we should always remember this first and never leave the association of devotees. Should try to stay in the association of devotees as far as possible, so that we can actually allow that Bhakti Lata Bija to grow and to be nourished, so that it can fructify and deliver us from this material existence. And I thought, we have time, we could read a little bit from Krishna book, because this verse, specifically these last few verses, are all about the glories of being able to hear and chant about Krishna. And so naturally, when we're in Bhagavatam class, it's nice to speak about the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga, so that we can understand that when we're hearing, there's so much benefit. Does anyone have a pastime that they'd like me to read from Krishna book? Come on, don't be shy. What was it? Okay, so I was thinking that too this morning. Radha Giri Dai. Okay, let me find it. So I think that pastime is broken into 3 chapters. So we've got the chapter where Krishna is approaching Nanda Maharaj, and he's asking him, Father, why are you doing this sacrifice for Indra? What's the point? Can you explain the Vedic conclusions behind all of this? And then they start worshiping Govardhan Hill instead. Indra becomes angry, which is devastating rainfall in Vrindavan. And then we have, sort of Krishna saving the day, which is wonderful Krishna. So which part do we want to focus on today? First, second, or third? The third, when Krishna saves the day. Is that what we want? Yeah. Okay, let's do it. 2:30, 38. Okay. I think you must be familiar with this chapter, Prabhu, because you gave me the shortest one, just probably very timely. Okay. So should we sing the Krishna book song? So I have a little bit of a jingle that I made up about Krishna book, so I'll just sing it to you, and then at the end you can all join in and we'll sing the mantra together. You'll know where to go. It goes, hey, it's that time again. Time to open up Krishna. Hey, what's going on in there? That supreme personality of Godhead, yeah. And who is serving him, standing him, loving him? And where is it happening? Vrindavan, Mathura, Dwarka. Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 Rakshamam. Krishna, 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 Pahimam, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahimam. So this is chapter 26, Wonderful Krishna. Without understanding the intricacies of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and without knowing his uncommon spiritual opulences, the innocent cowherd boys and men of Vrindavan began to discuss his wonderful activities which surpass the activities of all men. One of them said, "My dear friends, considering his wonderful activities, how is it possible that such an uncommon boy would come and live with us in Vrindavan? It is really not possible. Just imagine, he is now only 7 years old. How is it possible for him to lift Govardhan Hill in one hand and hold it up, just as that king of elephant holds a lotus flower? To lift a lotus flower is a most insignificant thing for an elephant. And similarly, Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill without exertion. When he was simply a small baby and could not even see properly, he killed a great demon, Putana. While sucking her breast, he also sucked out her life air. Krishna killed the Putana demon exactly as eternal time kills a living creature in due course. When he was only 3 months old, he was sleeping underneath a hand-driven cart, being hungry for his mother's breast. He began to cry and throw his legs upward. And from kicking his small feet, the cart immediately broke. and fell to pieces. When he was only 1 year old, he was carried away by the Trinavarta demon disguised as a whirlwind. And although he was taken very high in the sky, he simply hung on the neck of the demon and forced him to fall from the sky and immediately die. Once his mother, being disturbed by his stealing butter, tied him to a wooden motor, and the child pulled it toward a pair of trees known as Yamala Arjuna and caused them to fall. Once, when he was engaged in tending the calves in the forest along with his elder brother Balaram, a demon named Bakasura appeared, and Krishna at once bifurcated the demon's beak. When the demon known as Batasura entered among the calves tended by Krishna with a desire to kill him, he immediately detected the demon, killed him, and threw him into a tree. When Krishna, along with his brother Balaram, entered the Talavan forest, the demon known as Dinakasura, in the shape of an ass, attacked them and was immediately killed by Balaram, who caught his hind legs and threw him into a palm tree. Although Dinakasura demon was assisted by his consorts, also in the shape of asses, all were killed, and the Talavan forest was opened for the use of animals and inhabitants of Vrindavan. When Pralambasura entered among Krishna's cowherd boyfriends, Krishna caused him to be killed by Balaram. Thereafter, Krishna saved his friends from the cows from a severe forest fire. He chastised the Kaliya serpent in the lake of the Yamuna and forced him to leave the vicinity of the Yamuna. He thereby made the water of the Yamuna poisonless. Another one of the friends of Maharaj Nanda said, "My dear Nanda, we do not know why we are so attracted by your son, Krishna. We want to forget him, but this is impossible. Why are we so naturally affectionate toward him? Just imagine how wonderful it is. On one hand, he is only a boy of 7 years old, and on the other, there is a huge hill like Govardhan Hill, and he lifted it so easily. O Nanda Maharaj, we are now in great doubt. Your son Krishna must be one of the demigods. He is not at all an ordinary boy. Maybe he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead." On hearing the praises of the cowherd men in Vrindavan, King Nanda said, "My dear friends, in reply to you, I can simply present the statement of Garga Muni, so that your doubts may be cleared. When he came to perform the name-giving ceremony, he said that this boy descends in different periods of time, in different colors, and that this time he appeared in Vrindavan in a blackish color, known as Krishna. He previously had white color, a red color, and a yellow color. He also said that this boy was once the son of Vasudeva, and everyone who knows of his previous births calls him Vasudeva. Actually, he said that my son has many varieties of names according to his different qualities and activities. Gargacharya assured me that this boy would be all auspicious for my family, and that he would be able to give transcendental blissful pleasure to all the cowherd men and cows of Vrindavan. Even though we would be put into various kinds of difficulties, by the grace of this boy, we would be very easily freed from them. He also said that formerly this boy saved the world from an unregulated condition, and he saved all honest men from the hands of dishonest thieves. He also said that any fortunate man who becomes attached to this boy, Krishna, is never vanquished or defeated by his enemy. On the whole, he is exactly like Lord Vishnu, who always takes the side of the demigods, who are consequently never defeated by the demons. Gargacharya thus concluded that my child would grow exactly like Vishnu in transcendental beauty, qualification, activities, influence, and opulence. And so we should not be very astonished by his wonderful activities. After telling me this, Gargacharya returned home, and since then we have been continually seeing the wonderful activities of this child. According to the version of Gargacharya, I consider he must be Narayana himself, or maybe a plenary portion of Narayana. When all the cowherd men had very attentively heard the statement of Gargacharya through Nanda Maharaj, they better appreciated the wonderful activities of Krishna and became very jubilant and satisfied. They began to praise Nanda Maharaj because by consulting him, their doubts about Krishna were cleared. They said, "Let Krishna, who is so kind, beautiful, and merciful, protect us." When angry Indra sent torrents of rain accompanied by showers of ice blocks and high wind, Krishna immediately took compassion upon us and saved us and our families, cows, and valuable possessions by picking up Govardhan Hill, just as a child picks up a mushroom. He saved us so wonderfully. May he continue to glance mercifully over us and our cows. May we live peacefully under the protection of wonderful Krishna. Shishirada Giridhari ki. That sends a Bhaktivedanta purport of the 26th chapter of Krishna. Wonderful Krishna. Let's go back just a little bit. And I'll read you some of the statements of Krishna from the previous chapter when he was saving the residents of Vrindavan. So in this chapter, Indra understood that the sacrifice, which was to be offered by the cowherd men in Vrindavan, had been stopped by Krishna. He became angry and he vented his anger upon the inhabitants of Vrindavan. This is a funny quote. It says, Indra said, "Just see the impudence of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. They are simply inhabitants of the forest, but being infatuated with their friend, Krishna, who is nothing but an ordinary human being. They have dared to defy the demigod." So Indra, he was very, very angry, and then he sent these Samvartaka clouds to go and destroy the prosperity of Vrindavan. He said, "The men of Vrindavan have become too puffed up over their material opulence and are overconfident due to the presence of their tiny friend, Krishna. He's simply talkative, childish, and unaware of the complete cosmic situation. Although he is thinking himself very advanced in knowledge, because they have taken Krishna so seriously, they must be punished. They should be destroyed with their cows." It's just crazy that Indra wanted to destroy these people and the cows. So he sent the clouds. It was interesting because the clouds were a little bit hesitant to go and follow this order, but they went. As they were ordered by Indra, all the dangerous clouds appeared above Vrindavan and began to pour water incessantly with all their strength and power. There was constant lightning and thunder, blowing of severe wind, incessant falling of rain. And the rain was like piercing sharp arrows. And the situation became very dangerous, especially for the animals. So unable to find any other source of deliverance, they approached Govinda to take shelter of his lotus feet. The cows, especially being much aggrieved from the heavy rain, bowed their heads, and taking the calves underneath their bodies, they approached the Supreme Personality of Godhead to take shelter of his lotus feet. And they prayed, "Dear Krishna, you are all powerful and you are very affectionate to your devotees. Now please protect us who have been much harassed by angry Indra." So upon hearing their prayer, Krishna could understand that Indra, being bereft of his sacrificial honor, was pouring down rain that was accompanied by heavy pieces of ice and strong winds, although all this was out of season. Krishna understood that this was a deliberate exhibition of anger by Indra, And he concluded, "This demigod who thinks himself supreme has shown his great power, but I shall answer him according to my position, and I shall teach him that he is not autonomous in managing universal affairs. I am the supreme lord over all, and I shall thus take away his false prestige, which has risen from his power. The demigods are my devotees, and therefore it is not possible for them to forget my supremacy. But somehow or other he has become puffed up with material power, and thus is now maddened. I shall act in such a way to relieve him of his false prestige. I shall give protection to my pure devotees in Vrindavan, who are at present completely dependent on my mercy and whom I've taken completely under my protection. I must save them by my mystic power." Thinking in this way, Lord Krishna immediately picked up Govardhan Hill with one hand, exactly as a child picks up a mushroom from the ground. Thus he exhibited his transcendental pastime of lifting Govardhan Hill. Lord Krishna then addressed his devotees. "My dear brothers, my dear father, my dear inhabitants of Vrindavan, you can now safely enter under the umbrella of Govardhan Hill, just as which I have just lifted. Do not be afraid of the hill and think that it will fall from my hand. You have been too much afflicted by the heavy rain and strong wind. Therefore, I have lifted this hill, which will protect you exactly like a huge umbrella. I think this is a proper arrangement to relieve you from your immediate distress. Be happy along with your animals underneath this great umbrella." Being assured by Lord Krishna, all the inhabitants of Vrindavan entered beneath the great hill along with their property and animals, and they all appeared to be safe. They were simply astonished to see how Krishna was holding up the mountain with the little finger of his left hand. And once Indra could see the situation, he called away the clouds, being embarrassed. And then Krishna addressed the cowherd men and women. "My dear cowherd men, now you can leave and take your wives, children, and cows and valuables, because everything is ended. The inundation has gone down, along with the swelling waters of the river." The gopis, being very affectionate to Krishna, began to offer him yogurt mixed with their tears, and they poured incessant blessings upon him. Mother Yashoda, Mother Rohini, Nanda, and Balaram, who is the strongest of the strong, embraced Krishna one after another, and from the spontaneous feelings of affection blessed him over and over again. In the heavens, different demigods from different planetary systems, such as Siddhaloka, Gandharvaloka, and Charnaloka, also began to show their complete satisfaction. They poured showers of flowers on the surface of the earth and sounded different conch shells. There was beating of drums, and being inspired by godly feelings, residents of Gandharvaloka began to play on their tamburas to please the Lord. After this incident, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, surrounded by his dear friends and animals, returned to his home. As usual, the gopis began to chant the glorious pastimes of the Lord with great feeling, for they were chanting from the heart. Hare Krishna. So it's amazing. We are reading here about Priti Maharaj, and he is explaining he wants to have millions of ears just to hear these glories of the Lord, and that the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Devi, she accepts Shravanam Kirtanam, the process of hearing and chanting, as a way to elevate herself, spiritual realization. It's said in the Shastra that Lakshmi Devi, she, upon understanding the glories of Vrindavan Dham and the highest status of the gopis of Vrindavan, became eager to have their association to relate on that level with the Lord. And so she underwent these austerities and began hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, specifically in his pastimes in Vrindavan, such as this pastime here, lifting Govardhan Hill. So I guess it's just something to keep in mind when we're reading Krishna book. that just to feel so lucky and fortunate that we have the opportunity to understand these pastimes. I mean, when we think about just the world at large, even just this one tiny planet, Earth, when we think about all the different people who inhabit this planet, how many people know about these pastimes? So you can all consider yourself so fortunate to be able to hear these pastimes, and we can all become more and more indebted to Srila Prabhupada for sharing them with us, even though we're so unqualified and come from such crazy backgrounds often. It's amazing that we have the opportunity to hear these pastimes, and it doesn't feel like an austerity to sit down and read Krishna book, but this is a part of our purification. But even that purificatory aspect that we go through by hearing and chanting is actually quite blissful. So we're just very, very lucky, and we should always remember that fortune that we're now experiencing. And as Preeti Maharaj says, not to be careless and leave this association. I'd just like to conclude, and thank you all for allowing me to read Krishna book to you and share some of my realizations from reading Srimad Bhagavatam. And happy to hear from you now if you have any questions or comments, anything you'd like to add, anything that stood out or inspired you. Amazing. Thanks for sharing, Prabhu. I was just thinking because you were in touch with devotees, and you're saying that that devotee is always reading Bhagavatam and then serving you prasad. It just shows like Srila Prabhupada explains that the consciousness of the cook, the consciousness of the person who serves, goes to the heart of those who are served by them. And so that person was really absorbed in Bhagavatam and then serving you out of that inspiration that was coming from reading and hearing. So it's connected to this verse in the sense that he was hearing and chanting very sincerely. And then anything that he was in touch with, it becomes like gold, like touchstone. And so just by serving you a little plate of prasad, that taste for hearing, the mantra started to descend into your consciousness and kept you up all night. So it's quite amazing, this process. It's a very mystical experience, how it can affect our consciousness. but it's also quite scientific because, yeah, he is in touch with Krishna, and just by being in touch with him directly, yeah, you got so much benefit. And so just by staying in the association of devotees, I'm sure, 20 years later, 30 years later, you're still here, which is actually such a, yeah, it speaks to your intelligence, Prabhu, that you're able to stay in the association of devotees for so long and continue practicing since those experiences, not just take those experiences lightly and then just let them go, but to hold on to them. So. Interesting. Yeah. I was reflecting as well because, yes, from the time that I started practicing devotional service till now, I've seen a few people come and go. And I thought it was interesting that I got this verse. I found it really encouraging actually, because when you do see some of your friends leaving Krishna consciousness, it can be, yeah, quite depressing. But when, yeah, you hold strong and continue to read, you can see that for whatever reason you're getting mercy, and that you're being protected in some way. So I think it's also very important to be, we should stay in association, but we should also really honor the association that we keep so that we don't make offenses. Because I think the only reason that really, because it's saying here, like only a crazy person or only somebody who's like has animal-like consciousness would leave. But I've also seen that sometimes people are forced out because they're offensive. So should be very careful and not take it for granted that we're in this association. And yeah, it's not always easy, but Krishna, he explains here to Maharaj Prithu that when you remain equipoised and forgiving, that it's very pleasing to him. So yeah, you could say, oh, I've done this and I've done that and I've done all this service. And so even if I leave, I'm so elevated, I don't need to be around these people or something. But actually, it's not the mood that captures Krishna's heart. So we should always remember what really pleases him. Anybody else? Yeah. I have it written down so I can share it with you after class if you like. Yeah. But yeah, they're really beautiful qualities. And you'll find in this chapter specifically, if you even just read the translations, they're all listed like almost one after another in the verses, but I've just written them down so I can share them with you. But yeah, they're like, yeah, peacefulness, being equipoised is one of the qualities that stood out to Lord Vishnu, that Priti Maharaj was exhibiting his ability to remain equipoised, remain sort of calm under this pressure of being provoked. It's a very provoking situation to have somebody intentionally try to destroy your service, So he could have gotten angry or become vengeful or had some reacted to it, but he remained calm, accepted guidance, and then took that guidance and acted on it. And that was his equiposition, his ability to, remain equipoised in happiness and distress, and tolerant. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Hari Bol. Thank you so much, everyone.